Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to learn about the interview process today. This is probably one of my favorite webinars because it is so important. And I know that the job search takes a long time, but when you get to that interview process, you still have to push forward and put in a lot of work to actually get that offer. My name is Susan Delahousse. I am a senior career advisor here at Tulane School of Professional Advancement. My background is in recruiting at big law firms in New York City and at a tech company in New Orleans. So I was that person who you all were sending your resume to at one point to get a job. So hopefully I have some good tips to help you all during that interview process. Things have changed a lot recently in the interview process, especially with the help of AI and new platforms. So we will talk about those types of things. A lot of initial interviews these days are taking place over either the phone or on Zoom. So you don't have to go into the office immediately for that initial interview. And a lot of times that first initial interview is maybe a 30-minute call or a 30-minute Zoom. And it's very informational. You're finding out a lot about the job. Sometimes now they're even sharing the salary range. So they're not wasting your time or their time, which is nice. And we'll talk about how to prepare for an interview. And I like to equate it to preparing for a final. You have to put in a lot of work to prepare for an interview. And if you do a lot of these things in advance and you can save some of these documents, which I will share with you later, you can, even if you're interviewing 5 years from now, you can pull these out and just review them just to help you with that interview process. The first thing you want to do when you secure an interview is do your homework on the company where you're interviewing. It's so impressive when someone comes into an interview and they already know a little bit about the company. They maybe know the year it was founded. They know if the company is expanding, if they're opening new offices. And these are things that you can kind of let them know during the interview that you know, so they know you've done your homework. And that will give you a leg up over other candidates because they will remember. They'll say, oh, wow, Susan really did her homework on the company. That's really impressive. And some other things are, prepare your outfit in advance. If you're interviewing on Zoom, I have definitely heard from employers who are interviewing our students on Zoom. They are so impressed when students dress up. And no matter what, if you're going into an office, if you're interviewing on Zoom, I would definitely dress up. Even if you know it's a casual office, it shows them that you are prepared, you're serious about it, and that you really want the job. And it's okay if they're dressed down, you will outshine them and they will appreciate the effort that you put into it. If you are going into an office for an interview, prepare your materials to bring them with you. I always bring extra copies of my resume and a list of extra questions to ask at the end of the interview. I had a student recently who followed up with me after an interview, and she said she got to the interview and I had told her to bring copies of her resume with her. She got into the conference room, and the three people who were sitting across the table from her, not one of them had a copy of her resume. She was able to open a folder that she had with her, hand them each a copy of her resume, and so it was great. She was prepared. She looked like she was ready, and they really appreciated it. The other thing is I like to bring a list of questions for me to ask at the end of the interview. Sometimes, always at the end of the interview, they always ask, what questions do you have for us? And that could be the point of the interview where you forget maybe what two questions you had prepared to ask them. And maybe they've already answered some of the questions that you had prepared to ask. I like to bring a list of 7 or 8 questions. And actually, when I was interviewing at Tulane, I told them I had my little folder with me. I said, would you mind if I take a look at the list of questions that I brought with me to see if we've covered all of them? And they were all like, oh, wow, you brought a list of questions. So don't hesitate to tell them you have a list of questions with you. It also shows that you are prepared for the interview. Another thing is if you are interviewing, prepare your route. Sorry, missed that one. If you are going to an office for an interview, make sure you know where you're going that day of that interview, where you're going to be parking, what the traffic's like at the hour that you're going to be driving there. It can get confusing with office buildings, so make sure you have the suite number and give yourself some time to get there. You do want to show up about 15 minutes in advance. And if they offer you water, show you where the restrooms are, you can take advantage of that before your interview time. Typically, they're not going to start an interview early, so you only want to get there 10 to 15 minutes before your interview start time. Prepare your home office. If your interview is virtual, hop on, do a Zoom test before, and have your resume up on your computer ready to share. If they don't have a copy of it, you can say, oh, let me share my screen. Also, make sure you have a neutral background. I recommend blurring your background if you don't want to use any sort of other type of background. It can be, distracting if the interviewers can see things that are in the background or if something's moving in the back. So make sure you have, I'm sorry, my cat is meowing. Make sure that's another thing. Put your pets up when you are interviewing because they might want to meow or get in your lap. Prepare to be polite. The minute you arrive at an office building, your interview begins. You might run into someone in the elevator who could potentially be someone who you're interviewing with. The receptionist is important. The recruiter is important. Everyone matters. Everyone is putting in their input at the end of the day, and you never know who you're parked next to or riding that elevator with or in the restroom with. So be polite and smile and make sure everyone is giving feedback. A lot of receptionists and recruiters have been at organizations for many, many years, and the people who are making hiring decisions really like to get their feedback as well on the candidates. Prepare your elevator pitch. We'll talk about in a little bit. The starting question that everyone always asks is, tell me a little bit about yourself. So you want to prepare for that. You want to stay positive, keep a smile on your face, think positive thoughts while you're in that interview. You start to go down a rabbit hole in a question that they've asked you, try to get yourself out of it. After you've visited an office, or interviewed with someone virtually, you want to send a thank you email within 24 hours to thank them for the interview. We are all using AI now. You can have AI check your grammar, but the most important thing is when you send a thank you email, you want to mention something that you all discussed. So they know that AI didn't write the thank you email. You wrote it and you mentioned something that really stood out to you in that Zoom or interview in the office, and they will appreciate it. One question that I get often from students is, do I have to, if I go to an interview and there's 3 people in the room interviewing me, do I have to send 3 individual emails? And you don't. You can send one email to all 3 people. If they really like you, they're not going to not hire you because you sent a group email. It's okay. I sent a group email. I think I had 8 people in the room when I interviewed at Tulane, and I wasn't going to send 8 individual emails. I sent a group email. That is perfectly fine. And a lot of times people don't reply to thank you emails. It's kind of standard for people to not reply to thank you emails. They don't want to give you any false hope. If they write you back, that's great. But if they don't write you back, don't think that's a bad sign. It's just they don't want to give any candidates any false hope. Usually they'll just keep it in mind and delete it and then move forward with the interview process with you in a different email chain. Prepare to be patient. A lot of times it takes longer than expected to hear back from a potential employer regarding an offer decision. You never know if the hiring manager is on vacation for a week, someone's on maternity leave, someone's out sick. You just never know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe they're hiring 10 candidates at the same time. And I always tell people regarding follow up to wait a week and a day to follow up. If you have an interview on a Monday and they tell you, oh, we'll get back to you by the end of the week, and you don't hear from them by Friday, it's okay. They've just gotten busy with their job. So follow up with them on Monday. That will be over a week. You could just send a 2-sentence email saying, I wanted to reach out and let you know I'm still interested in the position. I hope to hear back from you regarding next steps. It can just be really short and sweet and simple. And typically they'll get back to you on that. Prepare your references, and I'll send you all a references template. When you are in that interview process, you want to have a list of 3 good references ready, because they will ask you right before they're about to give you an offer for your references. And now typically they will either call or email, and now there are platforms that send out emails for companies. You want to let your references know that you are interviewing for this job, and to be on the lookout for either a phone call or an email about being a reference for you. A lot of students don't know. They think that your references need to be former bosses, and that's not true. It can be someone who was your boss. It could be someone who was your equal. It could be someone who worked below you. It could be a professor from Tulane. So it could be me if we work together closely. There are many different types of people who can be your reference. It's just someone who's going to say great things about you. They're going to be your cheerleader. They know your work ethics. So don't stress and think it has to be 3 former bosses. While you are interviewing for a job, keep applying to other jobs. And you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to keep that momentum going. And I've seen it so many times. It happened to me. It happened to one of our students recently. He got 1 interview, and then that snowballed into 3 interviews, which then snowballed into 3 offers, and then making some hard decisions. I'm always here to talk about how to handle that, how to politely decline a company, and how to weigh your options. Prepare to be responsive. When you are in that interview process, if they're reaching out to you on email trying to schedule interviews, respond to them as soon as possible. This isn't a dating game. You don't need to wait 24 hours. If someone sends you an email at 9 a.m. and asks you times that you're available this week to meet for an interview, you can write them back at 9:05. The recruiter really appreciates that, and they want to move as quickly as possible with scheduling interviews, and they appreciate responsiveness, and it tells them a lot about you before they've even met with you. I would have candidates who wouldn't respond to emails that I was sending out trying to schedule interviews, and my thought was, does this person want to work here? Are they even interested? It definitely sends a message when you are not being responsive. When you get into that interview, now it's great. I definitely recommend putting in to taking that job description and putting it into ChatGPT, and we can do an example and also go over the typical interview questions. But if I was going to apply for or interview for this job, I would just take this job description, put it into ChatGPT, and say, I'm interviewing for this job. What types of questions might they ask me in the interview? And you know what? The company might be taking the job description and putting it into ChatGPT to prepare their questions for your interview. So you might have the list of questions that they're about to ask you, which is great. Typically, they're gonna say, tell me about yourself right when you get there. And the way that I like to break this down is just into 3 easy parts so I can remember it. And they're asking you who you are professionally. They're not asking you if you're married, if you have kids, if you have pets, anything like that. They're just asking about you professionally. I do like to start with, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited about this potential opportunity. And if I'm interviewing for a job in New Orleans, I definitely say I was born and raised in New Orleans and I am committed to living here. I know that is a little bit personal, but it's also a way to start things a little bit warm. If you are, from New York and you're going to go back to New York when you're graduating, tell them you're from the area. Then you want to tell them about who you are professionally. I would say currently I'm a senior career advisor at Tulane University School of Professional Advancement. At my job, I do this and this and this. I would basically be explaining what I'm currently doing because this is relevant to the job description that I put into ChatGPT. Now, if I am just coming out of school and my education is the most relevant, or I had a job in the past that was most relevant to this, then that is what I would talk about. You don't need to reiterate your entire resume. They have a copy of it. What you want to talk about is what connects you to this job. So you're going to be telling them about yourself professionally, what you do, and then you're going to transition into why you want the job. And you'll say, this job really stood out to me because of X, Y, and Z. And so it's just 3 parts. I tell them where I'm from, what I'm currently doing professionally because it ties into this job. And then I tell them basically why I want this job. And so it's really simple, it flows really well, and then they'll tell you another question from there. It should only take about 2 minutes for you to tell them that, max 3. Why do you want to work there? That is going to be based on all of the information that you looked up online about the company, what you learned about the company. They've been in business for X amount of years. You know, they have the best career coaches in the business. They're expanding, and all these things that you've learned about the company online, you want to tell them about, and that's why you want to work there. These are some other typical interview questions that the reason why recruiters ask these typical interview questions is because they're comparing your answers to the other candidates, right? So if I'm in an interview and my friend Anne is also interviewing for the job, they're going to say, oh, I really like the way Susan answered this question, but Anne really blew me away when she answered this question, and that's why I think she's the best candidate. So they're not, you know, these are typical interview questions, and they just want to compare candidates' answers. And it's actually easy for you to prepare because you can use AI, you can use these typical interview questions. I also like to have 3 words in mind that describe myself. So hopefully those words come out while I'm in the interview. And I would say I'm organized, I'm reliable, and I'm responsive. And if you're interviewing on Zoom, you could have those 3 words on a post-it note so you can reference them. And if they ask a question like, if I called your most recent employer, what would they say about you? You can use those 3 words. This question comes up a lot. Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? The only correct answer is still with this company. They don't want to hear that you want to move to Texas. They don't want to hear that this is a stepping stone for you to go somewhere else. What you want to say is, I know it takes a year for people to really learn a new job. So within my first year, I really want to get acclimated with the company and learn all of the platforms and all of the proper protocols. And then years 2 to 5, I want to start implementing my own ideas and hopefully grow within the company. That's what they want to hear. They want to hear that you are still going to be there in 5 years. What are your strengths and weaknesses? And we all have heard this question. It's one that is typically asked. We all want to say what our best strength is, and we want to give an example. Examples create visuals in people's heads, so it makes it easier for them to remember you. One of my strengths, like I said before, is I'm organized. Whenever I start a new job, I start an Excel spreadsheet, and everything that I learn while I'm doing that job, I add to that Excel spreadsheet. And it can be usernames and passwords. It can be links to certain websites. It can be lists of things. And I just build and build and build just so I don't have to ask the same question twice while I'm starting a new job. I've got it written down, I have it saved. And then every morning, all I have to do is open that one document where I have everything saved. I have all my little tabs named so I know which one to go to when I'm looking for certain information. I don't even know how many tabs I have in it because I have so many. But I just created a visual for you of this massive Excel spreadsheet with all the information I've learned since I've started at Tulane. I've done it at different jobs. And they're going to remember that. I've had people ask me, hey, can I see that Excel spreadsheet? And because they're so curious about it. And they want to do it. And, my weakness is I'm not very good at delegating. I like to, you know, be in charge of things. I think if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the best, which probably isn't the right way to be. But what you want to say is, I know my weakness. I'm aware of it. I'm working on it. I'm watching LinkedIn learning videos about it. I'm watching videos on YouTube about it. And I'm also implementing change in my office. That is what they want to hear. There are some tricky questions that they will ask you, you know, tell us about a particularly challenging project you worked on and how you overcame that challenge. That can be something that was a project that you worked on at school. Maybe you worked with a team and not everyone was pitching in. So you can tell that story. These are all things you do need to think about in advance. And I do recommend you just type out your answers. I'll send this in a Word document and you can just review that the night before you have an interview. Let's say you get 2 interviews, then you already have all your answers typed out. And these will just come easier when you're in that interview. I think I was maybe asked, tell us about a time you had an issue with a colleague or a supervisor and how you solved it. That's a hard question to think of an answer to while you're in the interview room. So prepare an answer for that in advance. These are some positive things. Tell us about a time you accomplished something that you're proud of. And this could be something outside of the office. I was working with a student last year who does ultra marathons. Those are 100-mile running races. That's a great accomplishment. So if you've run a marathon and you're really proud of it, or something you've done on the side, you can let them know about that. But there, of course, are great things that you can talk about that you've accomplished at school or at a current job that you have. And why should we hire you? And this is where you want to have those 3 words that are really positive about you, that say a lot about you. I know I'm reliable. I know I'm responsive. If someone sends me an email, I'm getting back to them with the answer as soon as possible. And if I don't have the answer, I'll get back to them and tell them I'm going to find out. And for those of you who've emailed with me, you know that I reply right away, even if I'm on vacation, and people appreciate that. I like to have my inbox down to 0 if possible. What qualities do you have that make you a great team player? That might be a good example from school if you had to work on a team or an office. And then how well do you work under pressure and deadlines? This is one of those questions that could be a dead end question where you could just say, I'm good at it. But you want to elaborate. You want to give a visual. For this, I would say I create, in my Outlook calendar, of course, I put all my deadlines on there. And if I have something really important for work, I put that in my Gmail calendar and I put it in all caps. So I know that is for work and it's so important. And some people maybe put deadlines, reminders in their calendar weeks in advance. Maybe people like to get whatever they're working on done 48 hours before the due date so they can review it. There's all different ways that you can let them know you are going to meet that deadline and you're not going to miss it. But you need to give them examples of how you do that. Tell us about a time you failed or made a mistake and how you handled it. And so I'll send you all these questions. Definitely look over them. And the last thing they always ask is, do you have any questions for us? And I had a student a couple of years ago who did really well in a job interview, and the company let him know he did not get the offer because he didn't ask any questions at the end of the interview. And we were both devastated about that because it was a great job. I recommend you have 7 or 8 questions ready to ask. And because they're going to cover some of those questions in the interview. And I recommend you ask 2 questions. And you can go back to, just like we were looking at ChatGPT, and you can say, what are some questions that I can ask at the end of this interview? And ChatGPT will give you a really long list of questions, which is awesome. And it'll give you its top 5 picks. And I had a student recently who was on his 4th interview for an internship, and he had run out of questions. He came to my office. We put the job description into ChatGPT, and it came up with 20 plus more questions. And he was like, oh my gosh, some of these are great. I hadn't thought of these. And he had those prepared for his 4th interview. Definitely use AI to help you, because they might be using it too. And this could help you get the questions. It's like getting the test before you're about to take the test. This is the best way for you to be prepared. A few other things when you are interviewing and in that job search, if you are on LinkedIn, you want to make sure your profile matches your resume, that your LinkedIn is up to date. Recruiters are looking at your LinkedIn. They are looking at how active you are, how many connections you have, that you have a professional headshot, you have a background updated. I did a webinar on this last week. I'll send y'all the link to that. But you want to make sure everything on here, your jobs match, and your education match your resume, because they are looking at all of these things. They like to see if you're involved in the community, your skills, and, you know, connecting with people where you're interviewing. When I was trying to get a job at Tulane, I reached out to some people who were in career advising at Tulane, asked them if they were open to connecting. One guy really helped me. I've still never met him to this day. He still works at Tulane. We're connected. He got a promotion recently. I congratulated him on LinkedIn. And he said, hey, do you have a minute for a phone call? And he called me and he told me I was applying for the wrong jobs. And I was applying for academic and career advising positions, which is different from career advising, because I didn't have any experience in the academic advising. That wasn't what I was interested in. So that one outreach on my part changed everything for me. And I started focusing on just the career advising positions that were open at Tulane. People are willing to help you. Some people will never respond. Some people won't accept your connection. That's okay. They might not be active on LinkedIn. And some people have rules. They won't connect with people they don't know. But other people, some good signs. I would be open to connecting. I have 500 plus connections. That's a good sign. It shows that I connect with a lot of people. I'm active on here. I've posted things. I just posted this today. That means I'm logging in. I'm seeing my messages. I'm active. LinkedIn can give you a lot of cues when you look at someone's profile. The other thing is when you're in that job search to follow the organizations that you're interested in, follow the companies that you're interviewing with. If you're, interviewing at Tulane, maybe I could see something on here that was posted that I could talk about in the interview. It's really helpful to follow places where you want to work because you're going to learn about things that are exciting to them through their LinkedIn post. So those are all my tips for the interview process. One thing we can talk about real quick is negotiating salary. I got a call the other day. Hey, can you meet? I got an offer and I want to negotiate the salary. When you get a job offer and typically they call you to give you the offer, you don't have to accept right away. Just say, thank you so much. I'm so excited about this opportunity. I need to talk it over with my family. I will get back to you. Is 48 hours okay? If they call on a Friday, you can say, is Tuesday okay? And so don't feel pressured to accept that offer right away. Ask them how much time you have. You don't want to drag it out for too long. They want to move forward. If they have other candidates that are in the pipeline and you end up not accepting, they want to let those other candidates have an opportunity to get an offer. But what you can do, if they tell you the salary and it's maybe a little bit lower than what you were hoping for, what I do recommend is you send an email to that recruiter, whoever you're working with in HR, and say, I really appreciate the offer. I am hoping you all have some flexibility on the salary. Um, you know, I would like to ask for X amount, and you want to ask for a little bit more than you think they're willing to give, because typically they will meet you in the middle. Let's say you get a job offer for 100,000. You could go back to them and say, I was really hoping for 120. And then they may come back and say, we'll give you 110. That is a great scenario. We all hope it works out that way. And that is what I suggest when you are in that process and you are hoping to negotiate. If you have to shoot a little bit higher, typically they don't give you what you ask for. So be prepared that they'll come back and meet you halfway. If there is no room for flexibility, they will also let you know, and then you can make a decision at that time. But if you have questions along the way, things along those lines that you're stumped with in the interview process, you can always send me an email and reach out, schedule an appointment with me, and I am happy to help. I have been on the other side, so I typically know how to handle these situations, and I am excited to see where you all go in the future. So thanks for participating, and I will follow up with a recording of this and also all of the documents that I showed you all and that we discussed. Thanks.